All right. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to give maybe like 1 minute for folks to join. Just some quick housekeeping things. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them into the Q&A box, and we will have a question section at the very end of the presentation, but you can type in a question at any point during the presentation. Yes, this is being recorded. You should have received a notification that it is being recorded, and we will send it out to everybody that registered. And we will also put it on our YouTube page afterwards as well. So you'll be able to watch it later if you would like to. Looks like we've got about 20 or so people joined. I don't want to hold up the time, and hopefully we'll stick to our 1 hour. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. I am Beth Nuttall. I am the Director of Grants and Programs at the Community Foundation of the Virgin Islands. And I am joined by my colleagues, Sonia and Demi. If you guys want to introduce yourself quickly.
Yes, good morning. Glad to have you here. I'm Sonia Barnes-Moorhead, and I'm the Vice President for Development and Capacity Building.
Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Demi Trim, and I am the Grants and Programs Associate here at the Foundation.
Great, thank you both. So as I mentioned before, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A. Demi's going to be monitoring those. If she's able to answer it, she'll answer it right away. Otherwise, we'll hold it for the Q&A section at the very end. And just a quick thank you to UVISL because they provided the template for this presentation, so that was very helpful. But we are just going to be walking through the different components of the application for the Popular grant that's being offered this year. This is, gosh, I should have looked. I think this is like our 4th cycle with Popular grants, something like that. So the application did open on October 1, so it's been open a couple days, but doesn't close until October 31. Ellie, if you have a question, please pop it into the Q&A box. I saw that you just raised your hand. And we're anticipating that the grants would be awarded in December, and that the period of performance is going to be from January to December of next year. So you'll have a full year for the project. That doesn't mean the project has to take up a full year. It could be a 6-month project within that time frame. And the grants amounts is up to $10,000. So you don't have to request a full $10,000 if your project doesn't need that, but the maximum that you can request is $10,000. And we are looking for projects that provide services in the areas of youth education, youth economic empowerment, meaning vocational training or employment support for youth, or environmental projects. And this is the kind of different piece from years past, is that we're looking for projects that prioritize serving low to moderate income communities. So who is eligible for these grants? You have to be a nonprofit organization with 501c3 status. And I just want to quickly show you all, we often get organizations that say they're a 501c3, but then it turns out their 501c3 was revoked and they didn't realize it. So I would encourage everyone to check if you are a 501c3. You can go to the IRS website. The link is in the PowerPoint, which we will also share. You can type in your tax ID right here, and it will tell you whether or not you have a current status with the IRS or whether it's been revoked. And that's just this link right here. Other eligible organizations are fiscally sponsored organizations, churches, and then nonprofits in the British Virgin Islands, and you will have to provide proof of that nonprofit status. Events are not allowed, so if your whole program is to put on an event, that would not be allowed. Applications from organizations with reports past due to CFVI will not be considered. So if you received a grant from us previously and it hasn't been closed out because you haven't submitted a report that was due in the past, you will not be considered for this. And applicants are limited to no more than 2 consecutive awards. So that's 2 back-to-back awards. So if you're not sure if your organization got 2 awards last year and the year before, you can just send me an email and I can double check that for you. All right, what are we talking about today? We're going to go through the different grant proposal components, so the different elements and the questions that are in the application. We're going to talk about budgets and preparation and what we're looking for in a budget, compliance and regulations, any rules that you would need to follow, writing techniques and tips, reviewing and editing, common pitfalls and mistakes that we see in applications, and post-submission, what would happen, post-submission, assuming you were awarded a grant. So the first thing I want to highlight is the grant announcement, or the RFP, the request for proposal, and how important that document is. It will tell you everything you need to know about this grant opportunity, and it will more than likely answer a question that you will have about it. It'll have overview, it'll have a description of the funding opportunity, the award information, information about the eligibility, the application and submission information, information about the evaluation process, scoring, everything like that. So this is available on our grant portal. There's a link to this document exactly. So this is our request for proposal document. The overview, summary of funding, funding priorities, who's eligible, period of performance, how to apply, deadlines, and evaluation criteria. I really want to highlight this for everybody, because if you write your application and focus on these areas of how we're going to be evaluating the application, then you know exactly what we're looking for. Each of these criteria are worth up to 5 points each. And so you want to make sure you hit on all of those in your application. Reporting requirements, and then you can contact me if you have any questions. So make sure that you review the RFP, especially before reaching out for any questions, though we are happy to help, of course, and answer your questions, but more than likely the answer to your question is in the RFP. Application narrative elements. So this will walk through all of the different questions that are listed in the application. The first question is talking about the mission of your organization. So just keep in mind that though CFBI does a first initial review, that's primarily for eligibility questions, red flags, anything like that. The actual review is done by employees of Banco Popular. So they're looking at your organization. They may have never heard of your organization before. So you want to be really clear about who is your organization? What do you do? What is the mission? And then the next question talks about the history. So talk about what the past achievements of your organization have been. How long have you been around? The more past achievements you talk about, the kind of stronger you can present your organization. You can say, we've already had success with XYZ programs, and now we want to do this one to either expand, or this is a new program that will help us do XYZ. Then you have the project description. So this is just a very brief summary of the project, but you want to make sure, again, that a reviewer who's coming in who may not be familiar with the type of work you do or your organization in general, that they could read just this project description and have a very clear understanding of what your project is going to do. And then we have the work plan. This kind of mistakes that we see in this one are often not actually having a planned out timeline. If you just are more general, you say, well, we're going to do this, and then maybe a few months later, we'll do that. That is not really what we're looking for. We want to see that you have really thought about the whole project period, and that you've planned the activities and the time period. So maybe you would say January to February, we're going to be doing pre-planning meetings, and then March to August, we'll host, X number of events for the program, whatever it might be, just to show that you've really thought through the actual planning of the project and tied different activities to different dates and deadlines. So we want to show what you intend to accomplish by specific dates within the project period, and identify any major milestones for the project. The next question is about staffing. So we are looking for you to describe the experience, qualifications, and specific roles of the staff. One thing we often see is that it's very just general and vague, and we're not entirely sure what the staff people would be doing that are supposedly, important to this project. So let's say you have 3 different staff people. Maybe one is a project manager, and it doesn't matter if you've hired these people or not. Maybe you have someone on staff that you can talk about their specific experience and qualifications to be a project manager. But if you would be hiring someone for the position, then you would talk about, well, what kind of experience and qualifications would you be looking to hire for this position? And what is this position doing? So if they're monitoring the project, what does that entail? Do they have budget oversight? Are they monitoring the work plan to make sure that you're meeting deadlines? Just being as specific as you can about the actual role of each of the different staff or employees or contractors or whoever who are critical to the project. Doesn't need to be every single person, especially if they have maybe really minor roles and they're not going to be paid with the grant funding in any way. But anyone who would be paid with the grant funding should be listed. The next question asks, what is the problem that your project will address? So maybe, if it's youth education, maybe you're educating youth about finances or something specific that you think that your program is going to be best at doing. And then the next question talks about how does your project address that problem? So this is just really to help our reviewers understand, okay, this is the problem that you are claiming that your project will address, and this is exactly how the project does that. So maybe if you're helping youth with finances, you are having, classroom sessions with people that are experts in banking and budgeting, personal finance, and you're helping them kind of create goals, whatever it might be. Just be as specific as possible in the ways that your project would address the problem that you previously stated. Expected results. What are the results and impact, short and or long term, that you expect your project to have? So this is a best guess, right? You're not necessarily going to know exactly the impact or the results that your project might have, but you can do an educated guess or estimate. So you think maybe we're going to impact 50 kids or 25 people. And what would that impact be? Is it that you're going to improve the financial literacy? Be very specific about the results so that if you were awarded the grant, when you're reporting back, you can say, okay, we expected that we were going to support 50 kids, and in fact, we supported 70, so that you have something to kind of compare and help you evaluate. Program target. So this is who will your project serve, the audience of your project. And specifically here, we're looking for information on how your project will include or serve low to moderate income communities and individuals. Now, this is not a requirement per se this year. However, it is a priority. And if you look at the scoring criteria on the request for proposal document, you will be able to score more points if you serve low to moderate income communities than if you do not. So that is a priority that we are looking for this year. So I would encourage you to find a way to incorporate those communities. There's no specific definition that we're using for LMI communities. It will just be up to you to talk about how you're serving them and why they are LMI. Sustainability, how will you sustain the project in the future? Generally, we see answers to this question like we'll continue fundraising, we'll continue applying for grants. Those kind of responses are totally fine. We just want to know that you have some kind of plan to be able to continue the project after this 1 year of funding. Evaluation, how will you evaluate the impact of your project and what does success look like? So kind of going back to those other specific impact question that we looked at before, this can tie to that. So that you want to use specific metrics, numbers, pre and post surveys would be the most common thing that we see. And those are great, right? Maybe you give a pre-survey to the participants of your program to kind of gauge their understanding or education level of the specific topic you're looking at in the beginning. And then you finish the project, and at the end you do a post survey to see, okay, how did we increase? What was the change from the beginning to the end? And it doesn't have to be a pre and post survey. That's just an example that comes to mind. But we need to see that you are thinking about how you would evaluate the impact of your project. And what does success look like to you? What is your goal? And if you have, let's say 50 kids involved in your program, are you looking to improve financial literacy of, at least 50% of them? What does that look like to you? And then describe that so that we can understand how you would know if your project was successful. Volunteer opportunities. So anyone that's funded for this grant will be connected with Banco Popular and their employees, and they really do like to be able to volunteer in any capacity that they can. I've mentioned kind of financial examples just because that's what many of the employees obviously have expertise in. But there's a variety of different backgrounds within the employees at Banco Popular. So here you can talk about specific opportunities that could be interesting or helpful for you to have Banco Pop employees come and support you. Again, not a requirement, doesn't necessarily play into the scoring if you look at the RFP, but that's just something for us to know down the line if you were to be awarded. And then the last question about the narrative is just additional information, and it's just kind of an open-ended question for you to provide any additional information that you want to share. So maybe if there was, not a spot that you felt like you could mention something about your project, you could put it in here. All right, on to the budget. So we are providing a template this year. You do not have to use the template. We just want to include the template so you can understand what we're looking for when we say a budget. It's very simple. We have categories on one side. So this is the type of expense. Maybe it's personnel, fringe benefits, travel, supplies, contract, things along those lines. Miscellaneous or unknown is not an acceptable budget category, so please don't put those in. Make sure you're tying it to something that is kind of a existing category. There's going to be an expense. And then we have a description column. So we want you to be as specific as possible here. So these are just examples. Let's say you want to have a grant manager. You're going to pay them $25 an hour for 30 hours, and here would be the total. And maybe it's over, 12 months or 6 months. And so we want to see kind of the breakdown here of how you're calculating each of the different amounts. Office supplies, you're buying pens, you're buying paper, maybe you need to buy computers for students. Just be as detailed as possible. And again, you don't have to use this template. This is just an example. So the budget will project how much it will cost to carry out the plans that you have just talked about in your narrative. And it's an estimate of the cost for conducting these future activities, and it should contain different line items for all of the expected expense categories. So these are just some examples, again, like we have in our template: personnel, consultants, supplies, equipment, transportation, etc. One thing that we often see is that the budget does not match the amount requested. So you can request up to 10,000. If you are requesting 10,000, your budget should total exactly 10,000. It should not total 15,000. It should not total 5,000. It should match exactly what you are requesting. Even if maybe you're requesting 10,000, but you have a larger program that costs 100,000, we don't need to see the whole $100,000 budget. We only need to see how you're going to spend this 10,000. So that's something to be mindful of, because that is a common mistake that we see. And then the next question is the budget narrative. This is used to justify and explain the expenses that you have listed in your budget. And again, we are providing another example of the budget narrative. And these are all linked within the application, and it will also be in the PowerPoint that you receive. So you'll have easy access to them. But essentially, this is kind of what we're looking for. We want to see the different items that you've talked about in the budget and a description of it. Why is it necessary to the program? How did you calculate the cost? So the example here, you have a program director who oversees the program and will spend all of their time hiring, supervising, training staff. This is their salary, and it will be covered for 12 months. And then that's how they got this $54,000 number. Same for travel. If you have travel that you want to include, their description here, the staff is expected to travel around the county or state, obviously island, to visit different sites, attend meetings, trainings, conferences, meet with different partners, etc. And then whatever your reimbursement rate might be, or maybe you're just using the federal per diem rates. And then an estimate of how you've broken down the costs. Maybe it's, 5 days of travel per $100 per diem, whatever the per diem rate is, equals the total. So this is what we're looking for in your budget narrative. And we want to see that every expense included in your actual budget is included in the budget narrative as well. Why are they necessary expenses to the program, and how did you calculate each cost? And then the last question is other funding. And then this is just for us to know, is there a gap in funding? So like I mentioned earlier, maybe you have a program that costs 100,000 and this is only going to give you 10,000. Well, we want to know, how are you funding the remaining 90,000? Is that money that you've already gotten committed from someone? Is it a grant that you've gotten? Are you using money that you already have on hand? Are you still fundraising? Just those kinds of questions if there is a gap in funding. And if the 10,000 will cover your whole project, then that's fine, and you can write that in there. So developing the budget, we really just want to see that you have really thought about each of the items that are going to be included as expenses throughout the project. So, we really would like you to be looking up the actual cost of things and not just doing a guess for everything. So if you're buying supplies, go to the Office Depot website or go to the store in person and check roughly what the prices might be. Call a vendor if there's a specific vendor that you're going to want to buy things from, get a rough estimate from them on what that cost is going to be, so that if you submit the budget and then you get approved, nothing is going to be a big change from your guess to the actual cost. And then you can segment your project into different phases. So maybe you have like a pre-planning phase, and you have an implementation phase, then you have an evaluation phase, and thinking about the different costs associated with each of those phases. It doesn't have to be those phases. That's just something that I'm thinking of as an example. But if there are different phases within the project, that can kind of help you break down and identify the different costs and then tie them to each of those phases. Proposal mistakes. So these are just kind of some of the things that we will see in grant applications that might kind of affect the scoring or make it ineligible. So the first thing is that the request is not of interest to the funder. So again, going back to the RFP, we're looking for the youth education, the environment, the youth economic empowerment, and specifically prioritizing low to moderate income communities. If your project doesn't talk about any of those things, then it's probably going to be declined because it's not connected to what we're looking to fund. The second is the problem is not well defined, documented, or understandable. So the question where we're asking, what is the problem that your project is addressing? If that's not clear, then that could affect your scoring, because we'll struggle to understand kind of the purpose or the intent of the program. Another one is the staff responsibilities and experience and time commitment not being explained. So I talked about that with the staffing, just to make sure that you're including descriptions, experience, and responsibilities of every different staff member that would be important to the project and that would be paid through the project. Missing or incomplete answers to questions. We don't see this too much, the missing one, because it won't let you submit unless you write in an answer to most of the questions, but incomplete we do see. So just make sure that you're being specific and detailed enough. You don't need to write us a book. Last year we got 80 applications. It's a lot of applications to review. So you want to be kind of as succinct as you can, but while still including all the information that we're looking for. And the objectives do not match the problem statement and are not specific or measurable. So that kind of goes back to the impact and the evaluation questions that we looked at. Just being as specific as you can in the kind of impact that you're looking to have, how you're evaluating that, and making it specific and measurable, as in making it have numbers, metrics assigned to it that you can track to see if there was success. Use of jargon, abbreviations, or buzzwords. So again, the reviewers are Banco Popular employees. So they might not be familiar with your organization or the work that you do or the kind of realm that you're working in. So make sure that you're using just kind of layperson language, no acronyms that people are not going to understand. The budget is not substantiated by the narrative, the items are not explained, or the costs for the budget items are inaccurate or inflated. So this ties to the budget narrative primarily. We just want to see that you've clearly thought about each of the expenses, explained why they're important to the project, and that the costs are reasonable. If we see something that looks extremely high, we're going to say, that seems a bit questionable. I'm not totally confident in that. The evaluation is only a summary and lacks details. So again, just being able to have the specific metrics to tie to the evaluation, or just talking about how you're evaluating the pre and post surveys, like I mentioned, or maybe there's other ways that you evaluate the success, tracking attendance, attendance over the period of the project, whatever that might be. Just make sure that you're including details on how you're evaluating the project. The proposal is not structurally clear. So that's really just, not having complete answers to each of the questions. And then the so what question is not addressed. So this is kind of going back to the problem that your project is addressing. How is your project addressing that problem? That really is the so what. So like, why would we want to fund this? What is the impact of this going to be? How important is this to the community? Reviewing and editing. So I always like to recommend and encourage people to use ChatGPT. I know it can be a little scary and it takes a little bit of a learning curve to use it. I use it almost daily at this point for like grammar, spell checking, things like that. So I think it's a really great tool. So let's say you've written out the answers to your questions, but you just want to run it through and make sure that there's no grammatical errors or that something doesn't make sense. You can use it for things like that. Now, certainly we don't want to see that you've written your whole proposal in ChatGPT. I will be able to tell because there's a very specific formula and way of writing that ChatGPT uses. But I think it can be a helpful tool just to double check work, even to come up with initial ideas for things. If maybe you've got a bunch of ideas bouncing around in your head and you want to kind of narrow it down, it can be helpful for things like that. But again, we can usually tell when people have used ChatGPT. So please do not just write your whole proposal in it. Some different grant nuances to be aware of. So reporting deadlines, the reporting deadlines are included in the RFP document. So you will know right now, if you go look at it, exactly when the reports are due. So they should not be a surprise to you. What your budget or approved expenses would be. So if you were to be awarded a grant, you would receive a grant agreement that has this information and a copy of your approved budget in it. So you will know exactly what has been approved, the period of performance, which again is listed in the RFP, any prior approval requirements. So for CFEI, typically the prior approval requirements relates to budget changes. We use a general rule of if you have to make a change that affects 10% or more of the budget, then you should get prior approval before proceeding. And these are all things that, we would go over with each organization that receives a grant as well. Identifying and utilizing resources for guidance. So as I mentioned, the grant agreement would have a lot of helpful information in it. Anyone that's awarded a grant, we have a pre-award meeting where we read through the entire grant agreement with you. It's not the most exciting thing, but it has a lot of really critical information, just as the RFP does. We'll go over the approved budget. And then you can also go to our website where we have information about the grant. We have recognition guidelines for grantees, how to talk about your grant, and then the request for proposals, as I mentioned. And if you're awarded a grant, you'll be expected to evaluate and monitor the project. You have to report on the grant activity, keep proper records. So that's keeping, all of your receipts in place, making sure that this money is being tracked separately from other money. and then you would enjoy a successful closeout. And again, these are all things that we would go through with each of the awarded grant recipients. So, key takeaways. The most successful funding requests combine a well-defined problem with a well-defined approach to addressing that problem. You want to view the narrative as an argument, so you're kind of justifying to us and to the reviewers why your project is going to be the most impactful, the most successful in addressing the problem that you've defined, and why it's the most important to the community. Generally speaking, the narrative justifies the necessity of each item required to accomplish project goals, and the budget justifies the cost of those items. Be concise and to the point. So this is going back to the fact that we may have 50 or plus applications that we're reviewing. So you don't want to write a whole essay for every response. Be concise and to the point so that we can quickly understand what you're trying to do and evaluate it appropriately. And utilize all resources and follow guidelines to efficiently manage your grant project. Our online grant portal, I just wanted to kind of walk through this for anyone that's not familiar with our grant portal, and feel free to open up your web browser, excuse me, if you want to kind of join along with this. But if you visit our website, which is just cfvi.net, and then we have a tab called grants, and under that, grant opportunities, that is what you will click. And you'll scroll down to the grant management portal button, and this will take you to the login page. So you can either log into your existing account or you can create a new account if you don't have one. And you can contact Demi if you don't know if you have an account or not, and she can help you. And then once you log in, you'll see your dashboard, and then you'll see an apply button. So the apply button will take you to the current grant opportunities that we have. Right now, we just have the Popular grant, and you can click see more. And this will just give you some general information, and it will also link to the request for proposals, which again has all of that important information that you want. And if you want to go ahead and apply, you can click apply. You have to be logged in to be able to do that. And then you can also preview the application, and it will download a PDF, and then you can walk through that and you can see all of the questions that we walked through today. All right, so I know that was a lot of information. I think I saw some questions kind of coming in throughout. Demi, can you walk us through what questions have been answered and what we need to answer?
Yes. The questions that have just been answered are asking about what age we define youth, which was shared to be like typically 6 through 18. When is the grant due? It is due at the end of the month October at 11:59 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. The one question that was answered but could use a follow-up on is there a percent allowed for administrative costs or indirect costs?
No, so the indirect costs are really for federal grants, and this is not a federal grant. So I would say, I'd rather not see an indirect cost. I would rather see that you're direct costing everything, meaning that you are applying a specific charge to a specific line item. And if it's just overhead costs, be specific in that. It's rent because you have to have the space to be able to run the program out of the venue, or it's WAPA, or it's internet, whatever it might be. We would rather see that you're being kind of more prescriptive in each of the expenses than just saying indirect cost 10%, because that's really meant more for federal grants. And I just want to clarify the youth description. In the application, so this is the PDF of the application, we say youth or any age up to the age of 24. So it's a pretty wide range. It doesn't mean that your project has to serve that whole age group, because that's a huge variation. But as long as it's serving people within that age range, that would qualify.
Another question is, will a transcript be available from this webinar?
A transcript, no, but this is being recorded and you'll be able to watch it as a YouTube video. We'll put it on our YouTube channel and we will also send the recording out to everybody that registered for the webinar. So you'll be able to watch it and kind of, you can jump through to different sections if you want to, but we don't have an actual transcript.
What are the responsibilities of a fiduciary organization?
So that's going to vary depending on who the fiduciary is. Typically, if you are fiscally sponsored, it means that you're able to use the 501c3 status of a nonprofit and that they are managing all of the finances as well. But again, that's going to vary based on who your fiscal sponsor is and what they offer for that service. And there's also typically a fee for that kind of service as well.
These two just came in. This is not a matching grant program, correct? No.
Correct. There are no matching funds required. If you request 10,000 and if you're approved, then you would receive 10,000. You don't have to provide any matching funds on your own.
And finally, can one organization apply multiple grant applications in support of different programs within the same organization?
Sure, you can definitely do that. If you want to submit multiple applications, you're welcome to do so. Just keep in mind that this is a very competitive grant. So, you may be diminishing your chances if you do that, because we do expect a high number of applications, but there's nothing to say that you cannot do that. What I usually would recommend or encourage is to kind of focus on the one project that you think is the strongest and ties the most to this funding. But yes, if you would like to submit multiple applications, go for it.
Thank you. And next one, some more. If you're already an awarded recipient of Banco Popular, can you apply again? And if you can, will you extend on what you already started or start another?
So the rule with the Popular funding is that you cannot receive more than 2 consecutive grants. So that means back-to-back grants. So if you received a grant in 24 and 23, then you were not eligible to apply this year. But if you received a grant in 24 and 22, then you could be eligible. So if you can't remember when your grants were received or awarded, feel free to email us and we can double check for you. And it can be either. It can be a new project or it can be an ongoing project. It doesn't have to be for the same exact project that you were previously funded for. It can be something totally new, or it can be an expansion of your previously funded project.
Will there be more than one company awarded?
So yes, there will be about 10 grants awarded roughly, depending on the amounts, right? Because it's up to 10,000 each. So some people might request less than 10,000 and that could change the number that we award. But roughly 10 organizations will receive awards.
Awesome. And can a church without a 501c3 serve as a fiscal sponsor?
That's an interesting question. I mean, churches are eligible applicants just because of the nature of the organization. Um, I might have to double check that, to be honest. I think whoever asked that, if you can email me, my email is up on the screen right now, that would be helpful. I would think that it's probably okay as long as you have to provide a copy of your fiscal sponsorship agreement in the application. So if the church agrees to be a fiscal sponsor, you have to sign an agreement and have a copy of that agreement to provide to us, on whatever terms that they want. So I think yes, but please email me so that I can double check that because that's not something I've experienced before.
That is all the questions.
All right, let me just look through some of the older ones. So yes, we'll be sending out the slides as well as a PowerPoint. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop them in. We did finish, oh, we finished a little early, 20 minutes early. Go us. So we'll definitely hang out for a little bit in case any other questions come through, but you can, of course, email either myself or Demi, and we will get back to you as well. But the deadline is the end of October at 11:59 p.m. Virgin Islands time. So, you know, and the system will not let you submit even if you're 1 minute late. So please do not wait till the last minute. Also, you know, the earlier you submit, the more likely it is we can do a quick pre-review and catch any red flags. But that's probably only for another week and a half, 2 weeks, I would say, that we'll have time to do that. So if you can submit earlier, I would encourage you to do that just so we can take a look and give you a chance to fix anything if there is anything to fix.
Oh, some more questions are coming through. Someone says, hi, are there sample template applications used as guides?
Sample template applications. No, we don't have, if you're thinking of like kind of someone that submitted previously and was successful, we don't have that available, but you can preview the whole application itself just to see all of the questions through our grant portal if you just want to see the questions without applying yet. But the templates that we provided more for budget. So there's the budget template, the budget narrative template. I think there was one other one, I can't remember. But yeah, nothing that's specific to like showing responses of a previous applicant.
Thank you. Another question is the fiscal sponsorship agreement form available on the CFEI website?
No, I mean, we are a fiscal sponsor for some organizations, but that's not, you know, there's a whole process that you have to go to apply and be accepted as a CFEI fiscal sponsor. And every organization is going to use their own fiscal sponsorship agreement. So that's really going to vary depending on who you're requesting to be your fiscal sponsor.
Can your organization utilize a fiscal sponsor if that organization has been the recipient of a Banco Popular grant within the past year?
Yeah, so again, the rules with the Popular funding is that you're not eligible if you've received it for 2 consecutive years. So if you just received it last year, that's only 1 year, so you're eligible this year. All right. Let's see, I'm just going to look at some more of the other older questions. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered anything, but yeah, like I said, we'll hang out for a few minutes. If you have had all your questions answered, you can feel free to drop off. We will send out the recording. Might not be today, maybe early next week. I'll do my best to do it today, but it might be Monday. We'll send the recording and the PowerPoint copy, and that will already have all the links to the templates and everything. But you can also just go to the CFEI website right now, go to the grant portal, create an account if you don't have one, and you know, start looking at all the questions and typing responses, working on your budget. And if you have any questions along the way, you can email Demi or I. Our emails are on the screen right now, and we are happy to help. We are pretty responsive via email, so that's the best way to get a hold of us. If you call the office, we are not in the office. We do not work on St. Thomas. Demi's on St. Croix. I am remote in Texas. So if you call the office, it will be slower than just emailing us. So I do encourage you to email us, please. I'm not seeing any more questions. So Yeah, Sonia, Demi, any other things you can think of that we should mention?
Oh, I think you did a great job covering it all. Thanks all for attending.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for taking the time to attend. And like I said, please email us if you have any questions. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any feedback for us, please let me know. Happy to receive feedback via email as well. And yeah, if there's anything kind of confusing about the application that needs to be changed, too difficult, let us know and we will do our best to address that. But as a reminder, the deadline is 11:59 p.m. AST, so Virgin Islands time, October 31. You're welcome, Anna. Thanks for joining. We still have a good chunk of people hanging out with us, so we'll continue to hang out for a little bit, maybe like 3 more minutes, 5 more minutes. What do we think, Sonia?
Couple more minutes, we'll see, when we're down to 5.
Sounds good. So yeah, feel free to pop anything else in. Oh, thanks for joining, Amy. I'm glad it was helpful. Yes, Demi, can you note down KB's email, please? If you registered with that email, we already have it, but we'll note it down just to make sure we include you in sending the recording. Oh, thank you, Mary Ann. Glad you could join. Yes, have a great weekend. Oh, thanks, Caroline. And Donna Lee, thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Joseph. Yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Hopefully we can get some relaxation in. Okay, we will keep your original email, KB, and note the other one as well. Got it. Awesome. We are down. Okay, Demi, you note that the other email is for a different person. Okay, thank you. We got it. Got 13 people remaining. Make sure none of them have questions. Everyone's slowly dropping off. All right. I think we're probably good. There's 11 people, but they may just not leave until we close it. So thank you again, everyone. Hope this was helpful and please reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend and thanks again. Bye-bye.